Hello there my Jedi and Sith friends, my Mandalorians and Megalorians, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your friend and your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And today, we've got some pretty massive news concerning the maker himself. It's always a great day when we can talk about George Lucas, and today we've got some really exciting news. One of the most exciting things going on in the galaxy far, far away at the moment doesn't even concern Disney. It's the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which opens later this year. I personally cannot wait to go. I'm hoping to make a visit during my trip to America when we go to Celebration. And over the last few days, we've had some new reveals and a brand new look. We're gonna dive into all of that good stuff in just a moment. And it should be said that while George stays away from the bulk of Disney Star Wars these days, he's still very much attached to his films. The first 6, those are still his baby, his creative vision. He might have varying opinions on different aspects of the recent stuff. Apparently he liked Rogue One, Pablo Hidalgo heard that George enjoyed the Kenobi show, but in terms of the real Star Wars that counts, to George, it's the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and some of the Clone Wars. And I think there was a period of time after George sold Lucasfilm to Disney, where he didn't want to get involved whatsoever. He felt very betrayed by the sequel trilogy. The fact that Disney didn't really use his treatments. But with some of the other projects, Ron Howard's Solo, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, George has been consulted a number of times, but in terms of the Star Wars that counts to him, nothing really matters apart from episodes 1 to 6, the stories of Anakin and Luke, and a lot of that love and passion is going to be on full display at his museum. Granted, it's not all going to be Star Wars. The Lucas Museum also contains pieces from across his various cinematic influences. But let's be honest, let's call a spade a spade. The bulk of the art that most fans want to see is from Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And George knows this. He's making no secret of the fact that this is the real deal. This is the most authentic Star Wars experience you can get in 2026. I'm so darn pumped. We'll get into more specifics later in the video, my friends, but the reason I gave all of this build up, all of this premise, is because there is another George update, which has kind of gone under the radar the last few days. Did you know, George Lucas has a small contribution in The Mandalorian and Grogu? I couldn't believe it when I first heard this, but it is in fact true. So what's the situation?
What's the situation, Captain?
The Mandalorian and Grogu is not doing great. It's only made back about $293 million, when it needs about $500 just to break even. But in spite of the rather dire situation with this movie, it was quite fun. Sadly, word of mouth didn't do much for it, but for what it was, I had a good time. I've made that no secret. You can call me a shill, but I'm just giving you my honest opinion as a longtime fan of The Mandalorian, and one of my favourite things about it were the deep cut Easter eggs. I don't mean the references that everyone got, but stuff like the INT-4 on Hoth. But did you know that one of the deepest cuts comes from the movie's final act, and it harkens back to even before the release of A New Hope? Big spoiler warning, although at this point I'm pretty sure that everyone's either seen the film or heard about it, the final battle in The Mandalorian and Grogu features the New Republic coming to rescue Din and Grogu on Al-Hata. They cause a lot of damage, but did you catch the familiar name of one of the Y-Wing bombers? During the final stages of the attack, Colonel Ward orders this Y-Wing to begin its bombing run against the fortress. The ship itself is designated as Red Jammer, and it's the one piloted by Adelphi Ranger Doc Suri, portrayed by director Lee Isaac Chung. And while those were really fun cameos, it's the ship that's more important. The Red Jammer dates back 49 years. It was built for the Death Star attack in A New Hope, but never featured in the movie itself. Industrial Light and Magic built several reference models for various ships, and one of the earliest Y-Wings was known as the Red Jammer, named for its distinctive red accents on the ship's hull. But for nearly 50 years, it was never screen used. The Red Jammer in The Mandalorian and Grogu is seemingly a standard New Republic Y-Wing, but it was inspired by the original model. But did you know, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau had to ask George Lucas for permission to use it? The reason being that the model was being prepared for display at the Lucasfilm Museum of Narrative Art. They wanted the original model, and they're lucky that George said yes. So I suppose in a technical sense, even though the entirety of Star Wars is based on George's work, this is his only explicit contribution to the film. There were some rumblings a few weeks ago that maybe Dave Filoni asked George about the Yoda species, especially in regards to Grogu's journey, but none of those have been substantiated. But according to Jon Favreau in the Mandalorian and Grogu director's commentary, the only thing George was consulted about was the use of the red jammer. The model was never completed, but the Mandalorian and Grogu gave it a proper legacy. Not to mention, in the soundtrack by Ludwig Göransson, there is a track titled by the same name. And I know there's a segment of Star Wars fans who love everything to do with the ships, and Y-Wings were already a favourite to begin with. So to have one of the original ILM Y-Wing models inspire a ship in a new film is very significant. I remember there was a bit of a Y-Wing controversy a few years ago because they're not really in service later in the timeline during the Age of the Resistance. The canon explanation for this is because of the age of their design. I can't remember which book it was, but it was mentioned that the Resistance figured the X-Wings pretty much could do the same job, especially if armed with stronger torpedoes. But then, they course-corrected in Episode 9, and J.J. Abrams brought them back for the Battle of Exegol. So maybe they did have a few Y-Wings lying around, but they saved them for particularly important missions. They were made to attack capital ships. They can pack a punch, but they are rather slow. I guess we were introduced to some newer bombers in Episode 8. But returning to the red jammer, my friends, this is one of many different models of ship you can find at the Lucas Museum. And this really is George Lucas's long-awaited dream project. He threw $1 billion into this thing, and based on some of the recent footage and photos, it looks very impressive. With over 20 inaugural exhibitions spread across 30 galleries, the museum, which opens on September 22nd, has been described by the New York Post as a die-hard Star Wars fan's dream. From a life-size N1 starfighter used in The Phantom Menace, to high-speed racers, props, costumes, a life-size General Grievous from his chase with Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith, George has described this portion of the museum as Star Wars in motion. I don't know what it is, maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's the fact George hasn't been involved in Star Wars for so long, but as far as Star Wars experiences go, this just feels like the apex. It doesn't get better than this. Even the high-tech elevators have an Attack of the Clones feel about them, and one of the reasons I want to support this museum is because it's George's passion project. And if and when I do go, my friends, I will be documenting it. And if one day, I doubt it would ever happen, but if I got the chance to meet George, I just want to thank him for Star Wars, tell him how much his story means to so many of us, and how it changed my life, how his movies gave me hope. And this reminds me of a post that I saw on Twitter a couple of days ago. The person said, if you could ask George Lucas a single question about an unresolved piece of Star Wars lore, what would it be? And my response, I doubt that George at this point in his life wants to talk about that stuff. There are some pretty cool questions fans came up with, but you know what I would do? I would just say, are you having a nice day? And just thank him for Star Wars. But I'm happy for him, his museum is coming very soon. I'll be there, I'm looking forward to all of the exhibits, Star Wars and not, and I'm also excited to learn. This is a museum of narrative art that speaks to influences from across the globe, and like George said, it says something about our story as human beings. We have more that connects us than divides us. But I hope you enjoyed this video, my friends, and if you did, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. It really helps out when you like the video, and make sure to hit the big subscribe button if you've not done so. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you, always.